Self-editing your novel can sound or seem tedious and scary, but it doesn't have to be, which is why I'm giving you 2 videos on how to self-edit your novel before publishing. If you don't know me, I'm Octavia D. Mason, giving you the best practical writing tips, resources to build a strong novel, and confidence to write your story. Without further delay, let's get to part 1. Since I am a self-published/independent author, meaning I don't publish my books via a traditional publishing company, I'm only going to discuss self-editing from my perspective as an independent author. So let's get to it. Self-editing is a must. Here's the reason why. If you have editors, you don't want to give them a manuscript that is riddled with grammatical errors and story inconsistencies. Your editors will be one of the last steps you take before publication, and their job is to fix all of those errors, those big issues in your book, helping you create a book that is ready for publication. But if you don't self-edit your book before giving it to your editors, this could put a hitch in their editing process, thus prolonging the publication and the editing timeline. When you self-edit your novel before giving it to your editors, you're taking out all those minuscule errors and making sure that the story is perfect. Doing this will allow your editors to tackle the more significant problems like sentence structure, word choices, and so on. Now that we've discussed the importance of self-editing, let's get to how to self-edit your novel before publication. One way to self-edit your novel is to create a book ledger. I began using a book ledger for my upcoming book, The Kingdom of Light, aka TKOL, when I watched a YouTube video on self-editing from a channel called Arthur Level Up. I will put a link to that channel into that video in the description below. Let me do a quick interjection about my book. Next month, I will be doing a cover reveal for my fantasy novel, The Kingdom of Light, and if you want to be one of the first people to check out that cover reveal, head on over to my website at www.octaviadmason.com and subscribe to my newsletter. Alright, let's get back to that video. The purpose of a book ledger is to have one designated spot to put all the information that is vital to your book. This book ledger is in an accessible spot that you can consistently refer to when writing, reviewing, and editing your book. When creating my book ledger for The Kingdom of Light, I found it helpful to focus on the few things that could apprehend my story and the telling of my story if not fixed. Trying to focus on everything that needs to be fixed in your novel can be a little bit overwhelming and also prove to be unhelpful. The first thing that I focus on in my book ledger are grammatical errors. If I tend to use filler words, I'll put those in the book ledger. For example, I tend to use just, only, and that way too much. Usually as I write my book, I try to avoid using these filler words as much as possible, but sometimes I miss them. So on my final draft of The Kingdom of Light, I went back to my book ledger and I made sure that I took out all these words, rephrased the sentences if necessary, and I took them all out unless it was absolutely necessary that they stay in the book. The second thing that I focus on in my book ledger are the specific terminology used by my characters. The 2 species in my fantasy novel, The Kingdom of Light, have specific titles and phrases that they use. To make sure that I use those terminologies and phrases consistently throughout my novel, I will write them down in my book ledger, and then I refer back to my book ledger during my self-editing process. The third thing that I focus on in my book ledger is minute story details. Dare I say that this one is the most important one out of the 2 I just mentioned. Why? Because these are the details that can be easily missed by you, the author, but not so much by the reader. For example, one of the main settings in The Kingdom of Light is a 40-story law firm building. Particular floors have specific purposes. Now, if I mistake the 30th floor with the 40th floor, I may not notice, but the reader might. And this detail, this minute story detail, can disrupt the reader's concentration, can take them out of the story and try to figure out, hey, did I miss something as the reader? And no one wants your readers to be confused. So in my book ledger, I will write down what floor is what, and during my self-editing process, I will refer back to that book ledger to make sure details like those are perfect and consistent throughout the entire story. Okay, creating a book ledger, I wasn't so sure how it was going to work when I first heard of it, but when I began creating a book ledger for my upcoming book, The Kingdom of Light, I found it to be of the utmost help. Why? Because Since my book, The Kingdom of Light, is going to be a 3-part series, everything that I use in this book ledger can be used for the next 2 books. And having this book ledger for a series is going to be extremely helpful for me as an author, and it's going to provide you as readers with consistency. This is how I use my book ledger, but it's up to you on what you're placing your book ledger. After all, you know what your story needs more than anyone else does. If you want a more straightforward, less complicated self-editing process, creating a book ledger is the way to go and will make your publication process simpler. Let's recap our practical writing tip of the day. Having a designated place to store information that is vital to the upkeep of your book will make your publication process, your self-editing process, simpler. Hey lovely people, I hope you enjoyed this video on how to self-edit your novel before publishing, part 1. And if you found this practical writing tip video helpful, be sure to stay tuned for how to self-edit your novel before publishing, part 2. But until then, be sure to check out my practical writing tips playlist right here on this channel. As always, if you love this video, be sure to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. And if you want more content just like this, be sure to check out all my other videos on practical writing tips for beginner writers, and don't forget to hit that notification bell for weekly videos just like this one. And also head on over to my website at www.octaviadmason.com and join my newsletter for a free guide on creating realistic book characters. Again, I'm Octavia D. Mason, giving you the best practical writing tips, resources to build a strong novel, and confidence to write your story. See you in the next video, part 2. Peace.